This is me playing the umpire at a Class A baseball game. Where?
Jamestown.
In Jamestown, New York. Now, here's the backstory about this one. I'm out in Hollywood working with my dad, and after work we turn on the Dodger game on TV. And at one point he just says out of nowhere, I wonder what would happen if the pitcher gave signs that the catcher had given signs that the pitcher had never seen before. And I didn't even think that was something that called for a response, so I believe all I said was, "Hmm." And then a couple days later, I'm back in New York, and my dad calls and said, "So do you have that all set up?" I said, "What?" He said, the baseball bit with the pitcher and the catcher. So I had to look up and down the East Coast to find a team and an organization that would let me do this. And sure enough, it was Jamestown. At the time, the Jamestown Expos was the Class A team. I was playing the home plate umpire in a real game with several thousand people in attendance. And the only people who were in on this joke were myself, the real umpires, the home team catcher, and the public address announcer. Now here's a little bit of what happened that day.
We're in Jamestown, New York, home of the Jamestown Expos. And the Expos field is going to be the setting later tonight for one of the most unusual candid camera sequences we've ever tried. Expos starting pitcher, a fellow named Bob Baxter. Now what Baxter doesn't know is that his catcher is working tonight for the candid camera. And I'm going to pose as the home plate umpire. Now, whenever Baxter tries to throw a pitch, his catcher is going to confuse him with hand signals he's never seen before. In a few hours, there'll be several thousand people here, and of course, they won't know what's going on either. Now game time is approaching, and the crowd files in. Out on the field, pitcher Bob Baxter is taking his warm-ups with catcher Dan Hargis. I'm behind the plate. One other thing, up in the press box, the game is being broadcast live on local radio station WJTN. Now, the two fellas doing the play-by-play have no idea about the candid camera stunt that will soon occur, and will listen in occasionally.
Been playing baseball since I was 8. I grew up in Norwood, Massachusetts, which is about a half hour from Boston. Went to high school and college back there. Went to college at Harvard, played there for 4 years, and was drafted by the Expos. The 1990 draft, and after a few days of minicamp, my first team was the Jamestown Expos.
Let's talk a little bit about the game. Were there any indications that you were going to be on candid camera when you were warming up for that game that day?
None that I noticed, and I don't think anybody else noticed that many indications either. It was the second game of a doubleheader, and I was scheduled to start. The warm-ups went, I guess, according to plan, just like any other game. I guess it was about halfway through the season, so we had done this before, obviously. And after I warmed up in the bullpen and came back to the dugout, we usually sat for a minute or so I can get a cup of water and rest a little bit before the game would start. I guess, looking back on it now, the one indication I did have, although I didn't think about it then, was after Dan Hargis and I got back to the dugout. Dan left the dugout, went back into the clubhouse, and he said he needed to get something or he had to go to the bathroom or whatever he said. And looking back at it now, I guess that's when he probably went back and got his microphone and got his final instructions. But at the time, I just thought he had to go to the bathroom.
Tell us a little about Hargis. He was the catcher, right?
Yeah, and he had been sort of the catcher on most of the games that I had started so far that year. He was the guy who caught me most of the season, so I'd only known him for 6 or 7 weeks, but I guess I knew him fairly well in terms of players on that team.
What did you think was going on?
Well, I really thought it was just a regular game and didn't feel like there was anything abnormal. We did our warm-up pitches before the game out in the field, and things seemed to be just fine.
And then what happened? When did you notice something was different?
Well, the first time I tried to throw a pitch, Dan was giving me signals that were not signals for pitches. Actually, they weren't as outlandish as they looked on TV. The signals he gave me were signals that we would use for either pick-off plays or some other things that obviously you wouldn't use during the first pitch of a game. But there were things that he knew about and things that I knew about. So actually what happened is Candid camera came back the next day with a video camera and did all the shots of Dan giving his signals. And I think Dan was hamming it up a little bit more the second day than he did the first night. So the signals he gave me were, pick off a runner at second base, or step off the rubber and hold the runner at first. And obviously, I kept on shaking my head.
Shows how you shake your head. You did it so well.
Well, I try not to do it quite as much these days. But yeah. Anyway, he was just giving me signals that I had seen before, so they weren't as strange, I guess, as it looked on TV.
Why didn't you just throw a pitch?
I threw a couple, and each time I threw one, the umpires would call a timeout. I guess if they had allowed me to throw a pitch, it would have been an official game with an unofficial umpire, and I'm not sure what the league would have done about that. So I tried to throw a pitch a couple times and actually threw a couple, and Hargis just sort of jumped out of the way, and they called timeout before the pitch actually counted.
Off against left-hander Rob Baxter, and we're set. Now we got time called, and there's confusion between the pitcher and the catcher, so let's get together.
How can you get messed up on the first signal of the ball game?
1 foul, 3, slider, we're okay? All right, cool.
This is ridiculous. I mean, this is the 48th game of the season, fans. If you don't have your signal straight by this time, I mean, you open up with a fastball. 9 times out of 10.
Time! What's going on here, Ted? I said we put down. Huh? We put down a number there. Just a minute. What is going on out here? Not putting down numbers, just putting down, I don't know what it is. How long you two guys play together? You know the signals, let's go. We've never done that before. What? Nice signals? Nice signals? Come on now. Fellas, we've been out here 5 minutes. We haven't thrown a pitch yet. Well, put down the numbers. All right. I don't know what you did. You just missed it. I don't know what that is doing. That's not what it's illegal. It's on numbers with the fingers. I did. Didn't. No, you did. You think you can do this now? We're going to get your manager out here and get you out of this game, fella. I don't know what these are again. Hey, make sure you keep an eye on me now. I'm watching you.
We haven't started the ball game yet. I'll tell you, maybe it's time for Baxter to get himself a set of glasses. They ought to take him to the optometrist tomorrow to get him examined. As Hargis, evidently not the culprit, he doesn't seem to believe it either for some reason or other.
I don't understand what's going on here. I absolutely don't understand.
And everybody marveled at the fact that you didn't seem to get angry. Why weren't you angry?
I guess the real answer is I couldn't figure out anything else to do. The situation was so ridiculous, I thought, that there was no way that I was at fault. I couldn't imagine anything that I was doing wrong then. So it seemed to be one of those situations that eventually everybody would see that I was doing what I was supposed to be doing. So there didn't seem to be that much of a reason to shout or get angry at that time. I figured that the situation would get resolved somehow, although of course I had no idea what the situation was at that time. Actually, my thought when Hargis was giving me the signals that I had seen before, but that obviously weren't pitch signals, was that he was either sick or delirious or had some sort of a dizziness or some spell. And then I started thinking about the fact that he left the dugout before the game, and I thought to myself, he must be sick, he must be not feeling well, and I guess just out of his head or something. That was the only thing that came into my mind is that Hargis was sick. I'm doing as best I can. I have no idea what's going on, but eventually it'll work itself out.
Looks like Baxter is ready. He's looking in, and he's still nodding no. Still nodding no, and I don't know what he's doing. He's still nodding no, as if he can't see or something.
What about when the coach came out and was pretty angry with you?
He was, but I was out of things to say at that point. I couldn't think of anything else to say. I couldn't defend myself anymore. I mean, when you're out in the field, the only people who know what's going on are you and the catcher. Nobody else can see those signals. So it was my word against Dan's, and at the time I guess I was losing, but I had nothing else to say.
Time is gone.
Now the home plate umpire is going to go over and talk to management, I believe, or they're going to put him on base.
So it's good news for the refreshment stand. You folks sit down there in the refreshment area. Stay in line. We haven't started the ball game yet.
I don't have all night to play this game.
Well, he's pitched since you were in Little League?
Pat, he's not giving any numbers.
Who hasn't?
Yeah, he's like going like this, like this, like this.
Hey, what?
He's not putting down numbers.
No, wait, hey, you get back behind the plate.
He's not giving any numbers. What's he doing?
He told him to give me numbers, I'll throw it.
And what's he giving you?
He's giving me this and this and this.
What does that mean?
No idea.
What?
I have no idea.
You don't know what it means? Just a minute, I'll run you out of here. What does it mean? What does this mean?
No idea. I have no idea.
Are you going to throw a pitch tonight, or are we going to stand here and talk about it?
It's on a 1. I'll throw a fastball.
Are you going to play ball?
Of course I am.
Yeah, I'm going to give you one more chance to have this fella play ball. Otherwise, we're going to run him out of here.
Can't let him out. I don't have any more pitching.
Well, we're going to forfeit.
What do you think when Funt came out from behind the umpire's mask?
He came out, and I still had no idea what was going on, although I knew, or I thought I was doing everything right. And he came out and finally took his mask off, and it still took 3-4 seconds to sink in that this was somebody from TV.
All right, let's go.
Okay, we're still waiting the first pitch. We're getting time called again. And now the umpire again going out to talk to the pitcher. And he's out of there. He threw Baxter out of the ballgame. One of the most unbelievable things in the history of professional baseball we're seeing right here.
My name's Peter Funt, and I do the Candid Camera Show, Bob. And we just caught you on Candid Camera. Now, there's the camera up there taking your picture. And you are one of the nicest guys we've ever caught on Candid Camera, although you're shaking like a leaf.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'd like you all to smile because you and the Expos are on Candid Camera.
Camera, folks, and we've all been taken.
Well, I guess we have.
And
We were sucked right into it, believe me. They did a great job.
And were you ready right then to start playing?
No, I was definitely, I'm not sure shaken up is the right term, but I was, my heart was beating a mile a minute, so they gave me about 10-15 minutes to sit back in the dugout and calm down and sort of catch my breath a little bit after that.
And how did you pitch?
Actually, I think I struck out the side in the first inning, which was pretty fun. I think we eventually won the game 7-4 or something like that. So it was ended up being a good night.
What did your family think when they heard about it?
I guess they first didn't really know what to think. My dad was a little angry. He sort of, his idea was that they were messing with my career and trying to mess me up before a game that meant something. But in the great scheme of things, proud's not the right word, but I guess they're sort of excited that one of their families on TV.
Well, what have you gotten out of being on Candid Camera?
I guess a little bit of acclaim, not a huge amount. They're supposed to pay me $100 the next day, and I never got the check, so maybe they owe me royalties for every time it's been on. I'm not sure what the deal is there. Maybe I should call the Candid Camera people and see if my $100 check is still over there. But certainly they were very nice to the whole thing. I've seen it on TV a couple times. I saw it I guess that winter. After that season, I saw it on TV, and then it's been on, I think, a few times in sort of Candid Camera, 50th anniversary shows. Some of my friends have seen it on TV. We have a friend who married somebody from Sweden, and she was back in Sweden visiting his family, and I guess the Candid Camera show popped up on the TV north of the Arctic Circle up in Canada, in Sweden. So that was quite an interesting way to spread the word about the Jamestown Expos.
Wow, so the Jamestown Expos have been all over the world.
They've been all over the world. I played in the Expos system for 7.5 years. Made it through all the different levels except for Montreal, so I spent the last 2 years in AAA up in Ottawa, and then retired after the 1997 season, and have been in California since. My wife and I now have 2 daughters. I work in a bank out here in California, and I've shown the tape to a few people, so some people here know about it, but it's certainly a part of my life that I guess not as many people out here know about as people in Jamestown do. The Candid Camera night is the one thing that I and everybody else always comes back to. I mean, there's loads of other things that I think of, eating wings for a nickel or a dime on certain nights in different restaurants, and the great crowd support we had at the games. I mean, certainly nothing in my mind compares to the experience I had that night with Candid Camera.
That announcer said it was one of the most unusual occurrences in the history of professional baseball. It was one of the most unusual occurrences in my life, I have to tell you. So thank you very much, Jamestown. I will always remember you and that footage from my trip to Jamestown that day. Now, yeah.